and then Sly Stallone. Sly Stallone. I've been so close to saying Sly Stallone. I haven't done it yet until then.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Taste Like Music. Jason, Joe, and Crams are here. It is a Patreon week. We are covering Sly and the Family Stone this week. A little bit of a different artist for us. We haven't done an R&B artist in a minute. Stevie Wonder was the last one, and aside from that, we haven't really done too many of them. So getting into some different territory here. As far as familiarity, I knew the hits. My dad had a greatest hits cassette that he had in the car. So I know all the hits basically, but I didn't really know any of the album cuts or any of the albums in full. So the albums were all new to me. How about you guys?
Yeah, pretty much. And don't know a lot of soul and R&B and funk in general. I mean, like you said, we did Stevie Wonder and, we did Pavement and Sonic Youth, but that's about it as far as that genre goes. So, yeah, pretty sure I used to think that We Are Family was done by Sly and the Family Stone just because it had the word family in it. But, I knew pretty much Everyday People and a couple other songs, and it's about it. I didn't even know they had albums. I thought they were more of just like a singles compilation kind of band. So in the shadows on this one.
I didn't. My family had the Greatest Hits album growing up, and that's really all I had heard until I heard Stand and there's a Riot Going On a couple of years ago, but mostly just the Greatest Hits was what I was familiar with. I didn't know about any of this stuff before Stand, and I don't know why I didn't listen to those. Just sort of like escaped, and the ones after, like, you never hear about them, and anytime you do, it's like in a negative light, which I always thought that was kind of odd, but everyone seems to be like, okay, just, Greatest Hits, that's all you need. And I don't know if that's true. I just don't know. We'll find out.
All right. So as far as what we are including, full disclosure, we had a bit of a miscommunication here at TLM HQ. I was under the impression that we weren't counting the High on You solo record. Joe was under the impression we were not. So I did listen to it. Officially, we are ranking 10. I will let you know where I would have put that record. And I think tomorrow I do have a track from it in my top 10, but I'll give you an honorable mention of a track not from it to fill it out in case you feel bad about that. So 10 records. Here we go. Cram can start since, you're the biggest noob.
Why don't you just tell us where you would have had High on You? What are you waiting for? I'll tell you where I was going to put it. Third to last.
Oh, it would have been my number 5.
Oh, and I would have considered Crossword Puzzle to make my top 10 songs. But enough about me and albums we're not talking about. Let's talk about the worst album I've ever heard. No, just this week. Babies. I'm sorry, Small Talk. But it starts off with the sound of babies. For some reason, he's newlywed, newly married. He wants to show off all his domesticated kind of bliss. And it just comes off really lame. I don't know why you would lead off with all these like baby sound effects on the first track. It's so annoying. Just stop. It's making my ears bleed. Just don't really know what they're going for here. There's some nice additions to this album that you don't really have on the previous stuff. You're getting the strings, trying really hard to do this like sweet funk thing, like heaven on earth kind of beauty of the family and all this. And I just think it's junk. It's like he took everything cool about his like being a funk soul rock star and threw it in the closet and was like, I'm a dad now. This is even cooler. And I don't like it. It's very low energy without being cool. Like you could argue that some of the other albums are pretty low energy, but have like a coolness to it. This one's just lame. Songs about families in like the most tacky way. For the most part, you still get some really cool funky stuff like Loose Booty, but there's just lots of dull kind of Sly by the numbers without much to say, without the fun. Some exceptions like Living While I'm Living might be a pretty good track, but mostly nothing really likable or memorable and pretty lame and not what I want out of Sly and the Family Stone. So that's my number 10, and I got it at 2 stars. I think it's a poor album. Of course, it's boring, so Jason's like, no, dude, that's like my number 1.
Yeah, we are way off these last couple of weeks, Cram and I. But my number 10 is Back on the Right Track. This is one of the later ones, the second to last one. I don't know a lot of the specifics of what was going on in his personal life, but I think you can, kind of piece it together by sort of like the things and the fact that they're bringing in a producer for this one where he had produced all the other ones himself. It's called Back on the Right Track. So they're like trying to cobble something together here. It's a very short album. It's only 26 minutes. So I think that's maybe a sign like getting this put together and getting enough material to put a record out was a feat enough in itself. It's fine. I think it still sounds pretty good. It's not like some terribly produced record, but it's mostly fairly generic funk. A lot of kind of like stock grooves, just sort of like think of what funk sounds like. And that's sort of what's going on here. The songwriting is just okay. I think the coolest track on it's probably the closing track with the heavy harmonica showcase, Sheer Energy. I think the talk box on the same thing is pretty cool too. And I don't think any of it is horrible. I don't think there's anything really that bad here. It just doesn't seem to have a lot to say. The vocals, I think, are lacking like any kind of soul or real feeling. It's just all fine, but nothing spectacular. Kind of floats on by. Definitely the least remarkable, I think, but still not a terrible listen. I have it at 3 stars.
All right, so both of you starting off higher than maybe I would have expected before listening to all these albums, because some of these just you read reviews and it's like 1 star, 2 star, like D's. I have Back on the Right Track as my number 10 as well. And this one to me, yeah, Jason pretty much just nailed it. There's not a lot here. It's 28 minutes. The songwriting, like you'd never know this was like Sly Stone. Like there's nothing here that would be like, oh yeah, that's a Sly groove there. That reminds me of something, from Life or Stand, or even There's a Riot Going On, or even Fresh or anything. It just sounds really generic songwriting. I think the production's good. The playing is good. Alvin Taylor on drums and Kenny Burke on bass are really good. Kenny Burke, great bass player. So he has some cool numbers on here. And really, that's what I noticed the most, just the rhythm section. Sly's vocals, they're okay. They're a little rougher. Still has plenty of personality, but they're not, standing out. They're not taking over. There's a lack of like the big group singing and the big group vocals and the back and forth and the call and response and everything. So yeah, I mean, other than the harmonica on Sheer Energy and Remember Who You Are has some cool drum stuff, but it floats on by. Like Jason said, it's 2.5 stars.
All right, I'm at 2.5 stars for my next one, number 9, which is Heard You Missed Me, Well, I'm Back. And when I read it the first time, I thought it was Heard You Missed Me, Well, I'm Black, which would have just been hilarious. And I've got it at 2.5. And I know I kind of misled you guys this week in the group chat, which you've done from time to time. This is my last 2.5. I'm up to good albums on here and up. I liked this week. Spoiler alert. Title track is good on this. I love the reeds and the stuff accompanying it. It's definitely got that mid-70s family band kind of funk feel where it's just like warm vibes all around, sunshine and rainbows and stuff like that. So I kind of like that approach. Definitely great bass on this album. There's great bass throughout this entire catalog. I like a lot of the backing vocals. Sometimes I prefer him going solo without a lot of stuff going on in the back, because I think he does have really cool like rock and roll posture through like funk and soul lens, which is kind of what I want. But I kind of feel like the focus is too much on the band and the return of like that Stone family sound, even though like it's new family members or whatever. So I think the songs kind of suffer. There's not a lot to say from this album, which is like when their bread and butter is they're putting together like these hooks and these funk grooves and having something to say, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, the songs just aren't that creative, not that good. All the attention is on the playing and the sound and the band feel, which is fine because when they do that on this album, they do it well. But like what was I thinking in my head is pretty annoying to me, even though I love the bass work. I like the vocals on Nothing Less Than Happiness a good bit, and I love that sound of that harmonica that's like reverb like crazy. At times throughout this catalog, they get into that Stevie Wonder texture, sonic texture of the harmonica, which I don't like. but this one works. I just feel a lot of this is like old and recycled. It's not very fresh or new for them, or even like exciting for like 76 or whenever this came out. The quality of the song's just in here. And the feeling is kind of gone, like what you were talking about with Back on Track. A little bit just generic funk, like stock funk, like Sexy Situation. Not too sexy, with like the high register backing vocals and stuff. The feeling's just not there. You don't get it in your gut or your feet. And I think maybe the production's a little bit too clean and smooth. Blessing in Disguise, I kind of love, though. I love the smiley strings and great group, so it has its moments. So yeah, they succeed on getting the band to feel back. You know, there's some cool funk on Mother as a Hippie, and it sounds really good. It's a very good sounding album, but, you know, a hot band and everything, you know, it's just not creative enough to really stand out as a great funk or soul album. So just 2.5 stars for me. I don't think I'll revisit it, and that's my number 9.
All right, my number 9 is Ain't But the One Way from 1982, the last record. And even though I got the last 2 records at the bottom, I think my biggest takeaway of the whole week was how well all the records kind of hold up. I don't think anything here is terrible. And knowing the story of Sly and how things ended up for him, I expected a precipitous drop off after the classics. And, you know, I think everything's pretty decent. I don't think any of these records are like anything to be ashamed of or embarrassed about. I think they're perfectly fine. Still, having said that, it's kind of a far cry from like the political statements and the kind of like cultural urgency of the best Sly Stone records. So I definitely don't think this is an essential record, but I think there's, you know, a little bit more fun on this record to be had than there was on the previous record. Lovinu, I think grooves pretty hard. There's some nice horns and male and female vocal interplay. One Way has some great bass work on it, and again, some killer horns. Sly's vocals on this record seem like they're a lot more engaged than they were in the previous record as well. He seems like kind of into the songs, actually, giving some pretty good vocal performances. I'm not exactly sure what happens to the low end on Ha Ha He He, but the kick drum is suddenly massive, real big and kind of flabby sounding. But despite that, I think it's a pretty good tune, nice little 80s R&B jam. As you get later into the record, I think it comes apart a little bit, not quite as good. I think, you know, Hi Y'all instead of Higher illustrates that there's like not really that many new ideas floating around, and the cover of You Really Got Me doesn't work too well. Who in the Funk Do You Think You Are sounds like ZZ Top, but it actually comes a year before Eliminator when they adopt that sound, which is kind of interesting. I don't know. Nothing bad here, nothing great, but some fun songs at the beginning. I think it's a fun little record. 3 stars, very, very close to 3.5.
Well, that's wow. It's a high number. I have it at 3. I have the same record, Ain't But the One Way. And this was supposed to be like a collaborative project with George Clinton, but Sly like disappeared. He just took off. Wasn't even around to finish the album. They got some guy, Stuart Levine, whatever it is, to finish the record. And that was pretty much it for Sly. Nobody saw him again until they found him living on the street in San Francisco or something, or whatever. And yeah, this is a fine album. Again, like Jason was saying, like you expect like these albums just like completely fall off cliffs because they're, you know, I'm looking at all these reviews and, you know, nobody ever talks about them. And when they do, it's just like, oh, these albums are no good. But again, like there's nothing like totally off the wall. It's not like a later Boston or a later Babies album where it sounds like it was done by, you know, amateurs or something. Like this sounds like a real album. I think the songwriting is kind of phoned in a little bit. You know, it sounds like stock Sly Stone production and work and stuff, and like that's fine. It's never bad. It's just not that interesting. But I do think Lovinu is pretty cool. It's got some of that funkadelic flavor to it. The Ha Ha He He, which is maybe a cover. It was written by Pat Rizzo. Kind of nonsense, but it has like a fun groove to it. I liked it. And I even thought the cover of You Really Got Me was decent. It's weird. Like it doesn't go how I expected it to when I first turned it on. I was like, there's no way this works, but it's kind of fun. I didn't hate it. And Who in the Funk Do You Think You Are? Great toe tapping groove. And there's some nice stabs of electric guitar in there. And it sounds like it could be on a Funkadelic record or on an earlier Slice on the Family Stone record. So decent. I mean, 3 stars. I didn't hate it. I didn't want to turn it off. So that's a win. It's a win for Sly.
Yeah, I've got Ain't But the One Way. I'm up to 3 stars, which means it's good. It's my number 8. Lovinu, bracing the disco a little bit here, and I'm here for it. I think it's a really strong song. Playing is doubling down on the last couple albums. It's pretty much just all about the playing. Like you guys are saying, like the song creativity is just not there. It's pretty basic, generic funk. There's very little difference in like these last few albums. I guess it serves the really diehard fans that just want more of the same, just like, just more songs to have in the catalog. But it's not going to win over any like new people that weren't like, man, I really didn't get Sly and the Family Stone up until the last couple albums. Said no one ever. But One Way, the song, I think is really good. I like Ha Ha Hee Hee. Songs aren't too deep. It's just good music to have on in the background. Like I would put this on again. And I actually think it sounds really good. I think it might be the richest, boldest, best overall sounding production. I think You Really Got Me is kind of a cool cover. I think We Can Do It is good. It's just like good listening funk music. Like what more can you want? You dance a little bit. There you have it. 3 stars.
All right, my next one is the debut, actually, A Whole New Thing at number 8. This one was recorded live in the studio, was a commercial failure. I think it has less of that kind of celebratory, let's bring people together kind of pop funk that their next album really had a lot of. But even though it's not quite hitting that signature sound yet, I think it does have a lot of their signature elements in place already. You got the super tight rhythm section already in place. You've got these great horn lines all over the place, and you got a lot of interplay already between the different vocalists. However, I think all of that comes across like a little more muted on this record, a little less vibrant than it would eventually become. Turn Me Loose kind of sounds a little bit like more traditional soul music than the kind of funk soul that they would help to invent. It's got sort of like a Sam and Dave kind of thing going on. I don't know. It's a cool and energetic record, but not quite them finding their sound yet. I still like it a decent amount. If This Room Could Talk, I think has a pretty cool groove. I love the horn stabs on that track. Let Me Hear It From You, I think has some great vocals. That one's sung by Larry Graham, the bass player. And I think he's a really excellent singer, actually. I wasn't really aware of how good of a singer he was until this week. Super soulful, and that track's really cool. It's got like this organ, almost like gospel type of arrangement. Run, Run, Run almost has a little bit of like British Invasion influence, I think. It's got a really cool drum beat on it. So I think it's a good album, but I think they would just get better in pretty much all aspects from this point on. I enjoy it, though. I think it's a good record. Like I said, 3.5 stars.
Right. I'm going to go with Heard You Missed Me. Well, I'm back. Is my number 7? 7? 8. Still an 8. Jeez. All right. I'm up to 3.5 stars for this one. And, this was an attempt, at least, to get some of the Family Stone sound back in, even though the only holdover at this point was Cynthia Robinson, trumpetist, and sometimes backing vocalist. And, it's not as good as the real Family Stone stuff, but I like the title track, first track. A lot of, I think the instrumentation is still really strong. Like they're getting great players to do all this stuff. Horns, lots of keys, kind of a samba rhythm going on, great bass. A little disco creeps in on What Were You Thinking in Your Head. Bass line, Nothing Less Than Happiness is fantastic. Ruby walking bass line there. And if you notice, I'm talking about the instrumentation a lot because that is really the key to this album. Like there's not a lot, I don't think, underneath. I don't think Sly's writing great songs. His lyrics kind of just whatever at this point. And so really it's just about the good production, very good production. Sly, fantastic producer, always sounds great. And, there's a little bit extra, there's some strings and stuff and a little like disco flavor, but for the most part, you're listening for the bass from Dwight Hogan and some great, trumpet from Cynthia Robinson and some other players on here, and that's what it is. It's a very good funky instrumentation led. It's all you really need on this. It's 3.5 stars for Will You Miss Me, Well I'm Back, but it's not, he's not really back. It's just a nicely put together record.
I think that's fair. My number 7, I've got Back on the Right Track. I've got it at 3 stars. To me, it's a bit of a carbon copy of Ain't Got But the One Way. Pretty much flip it in my list, to be honest. I did think it was annoying how on It Takes All Kinds, pretty much just ripping the bass line from Superstitious by Stevie Wonder. That was like, come on, dude, don't make it so obvious. Who is to say? Definitely has some hot playing on it. The playing is never a problem on these albums at all. Remember Who You Are, I like. There's some really cool funky guitar riffs throughout. But like you guys said, it's just still this pretty high quality basic funk. Like, it's like what a Meat Potatoes guitar 70s rock record is. Enjoyable, but to the funk genre. It's likable, but repetitive. If you like gathered all of the horns and beats and melodies from like these last few albums and put them into like a blender, it would come out as like one song that you just couldn't tell the difference between any of the other songs. It just morphs into like this recognizable cloud of Sly and the Family Stone stuff. I think the title track has really great bass on it, pretty hot. Clean production and that smooth soul funk kind of style, even maybe a bit of a jazz kind of feel. But it just kind of leaves you a little bit hanging, like you want to just be a little bit more impressed. But for how I define my rating system, I will listen to it again, and I think it's good, and I don't find much wrong with it. It's just this super blitz of funk and high energy, a little danceable, very likable, good moods, good vibes. There we go, 3 stars.
All right, my number 7 is Heard You Missed Me, Well I'm Back. This is the one that comes right after High on You, which was a solo record that the Family Stone had broken up, and then he reassembled a new Family Stone for this record. But I think for all intents and purposes, even these later records are essentially solo records. You do have like some of the old people that were in the Family Stone showing up once in a while on these records, and like some different people in and out, just kind of a rotating revolving door of people. But I think, I don't know, maybe Sly was getting short shrift from the label around this time. Maybe he brought it on himself by the heavy drug use, but to only release one single from this record, I think it is kind of a shame. And for it to be the album's closing track, and clearly it was only chosen because it's titled Family Again, and they're trying to promote the fact that, hey, it's the Family Stone again, they're back together. But I think there's so many better song choices on this record that could have done a better job of promoting it. So I don't know. I don't think this is a bad record at all. I don't think it's a great record, and it's not as good as his best stuff, but there's plenty of decent tunes on here. I think the title track could have easily been a hit with its super catchy horn flute. I think there's some flute underneath it as well. There's a really catchy kind of a horn line. Blessing in Disguise, I think, is a nice ballad. Seems ready-made for radio in 1976. Everything in You, I think, is a cool track with some cool rhythmic stuff happening in the bass and drums with big sing-along chorus. You know, I do definitely think this record is a step down from the previous efforts, but it's still a good record. Still has a bunch of good songs with single potential, and I don't think it deserved what it got, only getting the one single and not charting. And yeah, I think that's kind of a bummer. Maybe it's because he was messed up on drugs or hard to get along with. I don't know what the deal was, but yeah, not a bad listen. 3.5 stars.
Okay, my number 7 is going to be Small Talk from 74. I do agree with Cramser. That opening track with Just a Crying Baby, no, that's bad. That's very bad. Very bad opener. Kind of colors the whole album negatively. I'm just like, we really going to start with this? This is brutal. But I think it does improve very much so. There's some cool aquatic guitar on Can't Strain My Brain, which I really like. Great bass work from Rusty Allen, who came on for the previous album, Fresh, and returns here. Time for Living has some of that upbeat, funky, big spirit feel, the nice group vocals. Reminds me a little bit of Stevie Wonder, some violin at the end. Just a lot of cool instrumentation. You got the horns and the piano and the violin and all the stuff coming in. And I just really like that style. It's very interesting. The drums and the bass are really good. Same with Loose Booty, which I think is fantastic. Just a great jam. Gotta shake your ass to that one. Holding On brings in some strings and this cool, I think it's a electric piano or a clavinet or something, which is nice to hear. Reminds me again of a little Stevie Wonder action. And I think it's a fine album. It's a good atmosphere. The instrumentals are arranged really well. I think some of the jazzy like brilliance of Fresh kind of toned down a little bit. It's more like just mid-tempo grooves a lot, which isn't as exciting. But the bass work is amazing. Rusty Allen, some killer lines. And I mean, the band has had so many good bass players. Larry Graham, of course, the original. But there's not a lot of drop off throughout from the bass playing or the drumming, which is very good from a couple different people. So again, it's a great instrumental album, just killer grooves. The lyrics, I don't think I noticed a single lyric the whole time. It's just sort of they're there. The singing, Sly's not the best singer either, so he's not really doing the heavy lifting here, but I think the arrangements are fantastic. The production's fantastic. Just a really good instrumental funk workout throughout.
Well, Sly is not the best singer ever. That's true. He's not one of my favorites, but I didn't find too many things wrong with his vocal performances. My number 6, I've got a whole new thing. 3 stars, maybe a little bit too much of like a marching band feel for me at times with the horns, but I think that comes with a live band feel, which they pretty much would abandon right after this. But I think his vocals are wonderful on this album. I think he's maybe overdoing it a little bit at times. And I actually find the backing vocals on this album to be a little underwhelming. But I like the general cheer and positivity and like come together sort of nature that Jason was talking about. I like If This Room Could Talk quite a bit. I way the stabbing sharp horn notes come in and play off the percussion is really cool. There's some phenomenal drumming on Run, Run, Run. Turn Me Loose is really good. It does kind of blend together, which I think is a problem on some of the pretty much most records other than probably my top 2. You kind of just get like things that are in the same time signatures, tempos, melodic realms, same kind of horn structures going on. A lot of the songs, like you didn't have something to, an almanac to be like this song, this song, this song. It'd be really hard to tell 10 random songs apart on some of these albums, but it's still pretty good. Let Me Hear It From You is really nice. Doesn't quite reach the passion and emotional heights I think it's going for. I think Advice is a really cool song, and I Hate to Love Her toward the end or at the end. I think it's great. So pretty good, like feeling out process debut album where the playing is really good. But Jason's right, they haven't like nailed their identity or what they're going for. So 3 stars, it's good. It's my number 6.
All right, my number 6, maybe my most controversial placement here. I've got Dance to the Music. They come out the gate with a lot more energy than they have on their debut record. Immediate hooks right from the get-go. The fuzz bass on that opening track, just killer. The cracking snare. They start doing like that scat singing thing that they do a lot, which I think is very cool. It's a highly influential sound as well. It was dubbed psychedelic soul and really, I think, affected the entire genre. A lot of artists sort of started copying this style. Larry Graham's bass work, I think, is noticeably much more active on this record than it is on the debut. He's moving around a lot more, a little more showy, playing some really funky stuff, just built to make people dance, and I think it's really good. His playing on Ride the Rhythm is excellent. Overall, I think it is a really good step forward for the group. I think they find their signature sound here. They get on the charts, they have a big hit. There's a lot more energy, and it's a fun listen for sure. But I think after the undeniable opener, I think the rest of the record feels a little bit like everything else is lesser versions of the same thing. And by the end of it, I think it did end up being a little bit too much of the same thing. The exception to that is the album Closer, which is the excellent Larry Graham song track, I'll Never Fall in Love Again, which I think is great. I love his voice, gives an excellent performance. It's a good, fun album. It's got that great hit on it, so it's definitely worth a listen. but I think it's still just the beginning for them. It's them finding their sound. It's things coming together. It's a fun, enjoyable record, but I think it's a lot of the same thing. There's not quite enough variety on it for it to be like a really, really great record. So I've just got it at 3.5 stars.
All right, I don't think that's controversial because it's also my number 6. It seems to be not quite as highly regarded as some of the other ones, but I do think it's very good. I have it at 4 stars, and I think it's really cool, influential, that psychedelic soul sound that they kind of, I don't know if they came up with it or around the same time, maybe a little later, the Temptations and all those bands would kind of do the same thing, but just the way the sounds all come together with the pump organ and the harmonica and the horns, the guitar, that big bass from Larry Graham, the group vocals. It's just so cool sounding. I love the title track, Dancing Music. It's a classic. Very poppy, which is fine. They definitely get poppier. There's more overdubs and more studio work on this one than there was on the debut. I love the medley, the dance to the medley. I think it's really cool. It's 12 minutes long, but I just love how each player has like their own little section, like they're all doing solos. They all kind of take turns doing lead vocals, which is cool. I love the fuzzy bass so much. It sounds so good. And the ending guitar solos are groovy as heck. I love the tone on it. Love the tone on the guitar in general on these early records. I think it's really cool. And the side 2, not quite as interesting. I think they're good songs. Ride the Rhythm, Color Me True, Are You Ready, Don't Burn Baby. But sort of one note. They all kind of, it's hard to differentiate them in my mind afterwards. It's all like, okay, that's good, and okay, that's the same thing again, and all right, let's do it again. That's fine. But I do like the closer, I'll Never Fall in Love Again. That's real good. And I just like the sound, the bright, swirling, poppy, but depth to it, the soul and R&B and everything that kind of comes together. You still have that 60s feel, which I really like. I just love the time period, the way everything sounds, using the organ and just the sounds of the 60s, maybe elevated a little bit more than it should be or could be based on the songwriting, which isn't quite as good, and definitely a step below what would come, but it just sounds so good. I just love the sound so much that it's a 4-star album for me.
Yeah, Jason, you're fine. Let's keep talking about Dance to the Music because it's my number 5. It's 3 stars. It's good. It's not amazing. You're okay, buddy. Relax. Title track's great. Big service going into the studio and making it a studio album rather than just like the live takes album. Introduction of more instrumentation rules. The psychedelic guitar is so cool. The organ, everything is updated. And I think Joe's right. The rest of my review is basically Joe's. It's like pretty updated and a little bit ahead of its time. Don't like that harmonica on higher because it sounds like Stevie Wonder, but that's my challenge. I Ain't Got Nobody is cool. Love the dance melody as well. I love the acapella stuff in it. The guitar just sounds so cool. But yeah, a lot of the songs that aren't the best stuff kind of are hard to distinguish. Similar time signatures, cheery pop melodies. I like Color Me True quite a bit because it has kind of like this blues foundation and feel. So I particularly like it. It's a little like dark and savvy. The drums in Are You Ready are really sick. Closes with I'll Never Fall in Love Again, which I'm correct is just sung beautifully. Yeah, I think it's a good album. It's my number 5. Is it my last 3-star? How high will I go?
All right. Number 5 for me is Fresh, which takes some of the production style of There's a Riot Going On, and I think kind of makes it a little more song-centric. I think it finds a way to do all that interesting stuff that he was doing and use it to build stronger songs. If You Want Me to Stay, I think it's a killer pop funk tune. That bass on that track played by Rusty Allen is so good. Such a incredible groove pocket, amazing. And I think the really cool thing about this record is that there's a sparseness to the arrangements here. It's really, really heavily driven by drums and bass at the core. And you do get horns and keys and guitar, and they come in like here and there, they kind of like pick their spots, but they really leave a ton of room for the vocals. No one's overplaying very much, which I think is great. I think it works really well. Que Sera Sera, I think, is a lovely tune with Rose and Sly sharing the vocals. Got Larry Graham on bass. Just a cool evolution from There's a Riot Going On. I think it's more melodic, maybe even a little funkier, more pop friendly. And it gets there in an interesting way by being like almost minimalist, this minimalist approach. It doesn't feel as culturally significant, but I think it's a really cool album. I enjoy it a lot. 3.5 stars for Fresh.
All right, you guys are kind of killing me with these star ratings. They started out so strong and they're just kind of sitting there. Come on. Fresh is a 4-star album. It is my number 5. You know, it doesn't have the cultural significance, as Jason was saying, is something like There's a Riot Going On, but I don't think I've ever heard of this one before, yet somehow it's ranked 186 on the Rolling Stones top 500 greatest albums of all time. So apparently I just totally missed this one somehow, because it is very highly thought of, and a lot of it has to do with the way it sounds and the production, and how, like Jason was saying, the bass and the drums are like the lead instruments on this album. Like, they're so up front and they sound so good. I mean, Rusty Allen, who I was not familiar with before this week, just absolutely kills it on some of these tracks. Larry Graham has a couple as well. Just the way it's produced with that sound is just totally different than anything else that I think I've heard, at least this early, 1973. And it kicks off right on the first track, In Time. It's just disgusting bass line. They're, Rusty Allen and the drummer Andy Newmark are really kind of just leading the way. The vocals are there too, and the guitar and the horns and everything else kind of seems in the background, and you just get like this explosion of funk power, which is great. If You Want Me to Stay has that groovy funk, heavy bass and drums, but a good pop melody in there as well. And the horns, which are kind of in the background, but just the perfect amount of texture behind Sly's vocals. Let Me Have It All is a great funky pop jam, a little psychedelic in there. Frisky has some pop and bass. Skin I'm In has a sick bass line. And I think that seems like it's Sly. So that's interesting. Doesn't always, I don't think I've noticed any other bass credits to him, but he's great too. They're all great. It's pretty crazy. And I Don't Know Satisfaction, you got like a funky interpolation of I Can't Get No Satisfaction, which is cool. Got some wah guitars. Another sweet bass line on that bad boy. I don't love Que Sera's fine as a cover if it were left up to me, and Baby's Making Babies. Those are okay tracks. I think it kind of lets down a little bit at the end, but just the way it sounds and the bass and the drums on here, just so good that 4 stars easy for Fresh. It sounds so great.
All right, my number 4, I've got Life, and I'm still just 3 stars. I don't think it's really great, but I'm also just not really into soul and funk and stuff, so I'm doing my best here, Joe. I love more of the guitar here, obviously, more of a live feel than dance to the music, but not nearly as much as the original, so probably a really good blend for most people. Chicken is too goofy for me with the mark box and all that one. Otherwise, I guess it's cool. However, I think Plastic Jim is pretty awesome. I think it's pretty special. You're starting to get like these really culturally significant ideas and stuff. And the backing vocals I'm starting to come around to on this album. I feel like the songs being more short and sweet and getting to the point across is really just like highlighting the concentrate of the composition and the meaning. And that sweeping lead into My Own Thing that's used by Fatboy Slim is great. They're getting like more complex with like their little pieces and hooks and little touches into their songs. The harmony is really cool. But again, a lot of it, I can't lie, kind of blends together a little bit for me. It's kind of a problem on most albums. I love City. I think My Lady is really cool. Just a little bit too much of the same for me to really like it. I do like Jane as a groupie quite a lot. The bass is just on fuego on that song. So yeah, I think it is a really good record to kind of get from where they were and transition to their peak greatness. So I think it's really important for their catalog, but I'm not going to seek it out too often, but I think it's good. 3 stars, number 4, Life.
All right. So as I said at the top of the video, High on You would have landed number 5 for me, would have been my first 4-star album. My next 4-star album would be Life at number 4. This was released under the name Milady in the UK. It's interesting that it falls between 2 of their biggest hit albums, and yet it wasn't very successful. It didn't really have a big hit on it. I think it is definitely less of a party record than Dance to the Music was. I feel like they're almost taking like that psychedelic soul tag that was put on them and like running with it, really. It feels like they're pulling in a lot more rock influence on this record. You get those fuzzy repeated 2-guitar note lick that he's playing on Dynamite, which is really cool. I think Freddie Stone's guitar work on this record is a lot more prominent on all of the tracks, pretty much across the board. A lot of cool licks. Got that like chicken clucking thing that he's doing on the track Chicken. All kinds of little things he's throwing in on Plastic Jim, little licks all over the place. I like the drum sound a lot on this record. I think they sound really cool. They sound really natural, but they're also really aggressive sounding. Super cool. Love City, of course, been sampled by a ton of people. And like Cram said, Into My Own Thing was sampled by Fatboy Slim and used for Weapon of Choice. I don't know. I think this record just feels a lot more real than Dance to the Music did, which I think was admittedly a concession to Clive Davis and him wanting them to put out a more commercial record. This one's got a little bit more of a toughness to it. The grooves, I think, are a little bit nastier. You got lots of fuzz bass and guitar, and the bass tone on Milady is crazy. And I think everything is just like integrated really well here too. The horns and the vocals, the guitars and keys, everything is kind of moving together as like a rhythmic unit really well. I think the songwriting is really solid. Harmony is cool. The title track's great. Milady, I like Chicken a lot. It's weird, but it's cool. Dynamite's cool. A lot of good stuff. So 4 stars for Life.
All right, my number 4, I'm going back to the debut. 1967 is A Whole New Thing. I'm up to 4.5 stars. I think it's just awesome. Absolutely love Underdog. It's the energy, the drum sound, the psychedelic soul style, basically creating it. As you listen, it's like, wow, nothing like this quite has ever been done. Looking at all these like 3-star reviews, I'm just wondering what the hell these critics are thinking, because it's awesome. I mean, the group vocals, the playing, production's great. I don't know what they could possibly be like looking for that isn't being delivered here. Like, it's incredible combination of funk and soul and R&B, but there's a lot of like 60s pop in there. Sly had been producing. He produced like the Bo Brummel's album, so he wasn't like coming from like a straight Motown place. Like, he's bringing in all this stuff. He's in San Francisco, so he's bringing in things that no one else had brought into like a big integrated band, which was also unique. You had the black and the white coming together and making this totally whole new thing, like exactly what it is. And I think the songs are very good. I don't think they're underdeveloped or anything like that for a debut. I love the big swirling organ that's all over this. If This Room Could Talk, I Cannot Make It, which has like this country rock like undertone, which is really cool. A little like Bo Brummel's or Birds or something that kind of seeps into this soul and R&B music, but you still have like the great horns and the rumbling bass lines. And I just think it's great. Let Me Hear From You got a little slower R&B soul ballad. Trip to Your Heart, big R&B flavored pop, great group vocals on that. And I think it just sounds great. Like, it's a combination of all these things that I love, and I think it's just cool, very cool. Didn't know about this album before this week, but it hits like all the right notes for me as far as like stylistic and everything. So I loved it. 4.5 stars for A Whole New Thing.
Okay, my number 3, I've got Fresh, and I've got it at 3.5. I do think it's really good. I think it's livelier than Riot. In time is chill, but like much more boisterous and fun. Probably like their more funky and sexier thing than they've ever done. If You Want Me to Stay is pretty moody and hot. I think it's just got a great like body feel to it. Like you can't help but just like squirm and get down to this album. Maybe even a bit more personal record. Like you guys are talking about, it's like less cultural. Like he's not really representing a big movement or cause or having like this collective mentality. It's just himself. And as a frontman, he's getting a little bit sassy and having some braggadocio, which is really cool. It's like really enjoying himself. I think Frisky is pretty cool and seductive. And like you guys are saying, the playing is just really good. Love when that song when he does the Call Me Back on the Telephone part. So he's kind of expanding his arsenal as a vocalist, kind of his frontman coming out party to me. Not that he didn't have it on the first few records. I don't know if the quality of the writing or artistry is as close in comparison to my top 2. There is some duds like Thankful and Thoughtful, stuff that kind of just goes nowhere and just filler really. But I love the bass and the groove on I Don't Know. I think Keep On Dancing is kind of lame though. It's kind of like, hey, do you remember our one song or whatever? But I do like Que Sera Sera, classic take on the old Doris Day song. I like If It Were Left Up to Me a lot, one of the catchier and popular songs. It sounds like it could have been on one of their earlier albums. Babies Making Babies to close out the album is pretty cool, even though after that there would be way too much babies on the next album. But I got a 3.5. I think it's super cool. My number 3.
All right. Top 3 for me are all super close. I could see them kind of switching around. It was a tough decision. Today, number 3, I'm going with There's a Riot Going On. Kind of a darker record, more drug use happening at this point, and some tension starting to build between the band members. Still generally considered one of their best efforts. I think most people probably put it 1 or 2. Was a big commercial success, had the big hit on it, Family Affair, which I think was number 1, maybe not on the pop charts, but at least on the R&B charts. I think that song is awesome. I love the really upfront vocals, super cool. Love the whole sound and direction of this record. I think the production is incredible, although I think most of the tracks definitely less immediate and not a lot of pop potential in it, which is maybe one thing I kind of struggle with this record. Like, part of me wanted to put this record number 1 just because I love the way it sounds, and the production I think is so cool. And, they were doing some really cool stuff, early use of drum machines. There's a haunting quality to a lot of the album, like on the track Time. Sounds like Sly's like alone in the studio, just really reverberant, and it sounds like he's in a big room by himself. Running Away, along with Family Affair, has that pop sensibility of the older Sly stuff, but even that has this really interesting like vocal and drum production. Really upfront, really dry, and just like this undercurrent of sadness through the whole thing. Just Like a Baby, I think, is a really cool understated tune. And compared with Stand, like, I don't know, it's hard to say which is better. I think that production-wise, this one is probably my favorite. But I think the better pop songs are on Stand. And I think that record just has kind of like a cohesiveness, and like the way it all flows together works really well. My favorite songs here probably trump anything on Stand, but I think Stand's probably a more complete listen. So I don't know, it could flip, but today Riot is number 3.
All right. Well, for me, Stand is number 3. And yeah, it's very tight. These top 3 are very tight. I think Stand, I like the singles, Stand, I Want to Take You Higher, Everyday People, You Can Make It If You Try, Sing a Simple Song. All very good sounding pop tunes. Maybe a little more pop than we're used to from them. It's closer to like Dance to the Music, where it's like really pop, and it kind of squashes down like a little bit of that R&B, funk, and soul, which is fine because they're very good songs. And the production on this, really clean, like just perfect, almost, it's really 70s sounding at this point, 69, especially compared to Life, which was a lot rawer and less of the overdubs and studio work. And this is Sly just being like the perfectionist, getting everything sounding perfectly. And, he's doing his best to unite everyone. Like, this is his big, like, let's get along, like, bring everybody together, utopia, black, white, male, female, doesn't matter. Just bring them all together. We can do it. Kicks off a stand. Track number 2, how do I say this? DCMNW. I'm not gonna say. Don't call me. We can't say it. Back in those days, though, it was sort of like, I don't know, maybe it was the two were equatable. Not anymore. Can't talk about that one, but it's a decent groove. I don't like it that much as a song, especially as number 2, though. I think it kind of kills the momentum. I Want to Take You Higher, though. Somebody's Watching You, Sing Simple Song, all great. Everyone on earth has heard I Want to Take You Higher. That groove to kick it off is just so great. And Somebody's Watching You, I think, is super underrated. I don't think I'd heard, well, I guess I've heard this album before, but I didn't remember it until this time. And it's really cool, paranoid little pop song. Has I don't know if it's a vibraphone or something, like kicking in there. Really cool. The vocal arrangement is amazing, and just the level of production, just all the different instruments coming together is just insane. Like, Sly was a friggin' genius when it comes to arranging sounds in a way that just makes them all sound like such part of one. It's almost like Brian Wilson-esque ability to like just bring in all these instruments and just arrange them so that they're all in the perfect right place, which is really cool. And then everyday people, beautiful message, of course. Again, we're all the same. We're all should be able to get along. Sex Machine, that one tries my patience a little bit. It's 13 minutes and 45 seconds long, and I think it sounds cool. Like the vocoder vocals, really badass. The groove's great. There's some nice sax work from Jerry Martini on it. Larry Graham's always killing it on bass, and Greg Errico drums, phenomenal. But it's 13 minutes and 45 seconds long, and it could be like 5 minutes, and I think it would be perfect. So that kind of kills it a little bit for me on side 2, because that is the majority of side 2 is just Sex Machine. But it does end well with You Can Make It If You Try. Really great drum and bass groove on that. So it's a great album. It's 4.5 stars. The negatives, very much outweighed by the positives. It's just a couple of things that keep it down compared to There's a Riot Going On, and the other one I haven't mentioned, Life. So one of those two, my number 1.
All right, my number 2 is There's a Riot Going On, and it's such a cool album to follow up Stand, which is this like super positive, let's come together, we've got these issues, we represent this movement. And then There's a Riot Going On is like still talking about that, but such a different perspective. It's just like, it's not working, like, so let's just chill out, and like, the world is on fire and no one cared about us saying that, the sky is falling. So this is how we're going to get by from now on. Like, it's so chill and just cool. There's funky tripping guitar right off the bat. I think it's like, it doesn't have that glimmer in the eye that Stan did, that positive like outlook. This is one very dopey, druggy, chill, faded kind of album, and it's so cool. It's a very good way to communicate the coping mechanisms of the failures of all of like the best wishes on Stand. And it's almost got like a jazzy nature to the coolness, much lower energy, doesn't have like the pop hooks and the pop sensations, but the music's still really cool. Just Like a Baby is so cool. So is Poet. This is all like their version of like their beatnik sound almost. The electric organs on this album are so cool. There are very few like bursts of energy. It's like an album unlike anything else in their catalog, and doesn't really bother me at all how like down and soaked and just like whateverisms is so cool. I think it's just got a really great album feel to it, a different kind of like defeated energy to me that I think is brilliant for the artistic statement. Africa Talks to You is great. I think it's so poignant that the title track, There's a Riot Going On, is just like this blank emptiness, like says everything about the way a lot of Americans saw this plight. I think it's brilliant. You Caught Me Smiling is great. Maybe it dies off a little bit at the end for me, but I still dig it. I think it's almost a masterpiece. I've got it a very strong 4.5 stars. I really, really love There's a Riot Going On. That's my number 2. And yeah, I took Joe. I get my stars up there.
All right. So Cram and I not quite going 2 weeks in a row with his worst as my favorite. My number 2 is Small Talk, which I like a lot. I think it's really, really listenable. I think there's a lot of good songs. This was the last one with the original Family Stone, even though you have Rusty Allen on bass for the whole thing. This record just has like this big 70s lushness, mid 70s. Kind of reminds me of Wings, like Speed of Sound with the big strings and big horns. The record is still pretty drum and bass driven, but it's got a really warm, full sound thanks to those strings coming in and filling up all that space. Doesn't have that same like sparse bare bonesness that Fresh had. And I like that feeling of domestic bliss that Cram was talking about. I think it sounds really good. I think Sly is good at singing these type of songs, like Mother Beautiful and Say You Will and This Is Love. I think his vocal performances on this record are great. I think he sings them with a ton of feeling. And Rusty Allen coming in, no slouch on bass. I think he picks up right where Larry Graham left off, and maybe even is a little better, actually. I don't know, maybe that's sacrilege to say, but he's crushing it on some of these tracks. Living While I'm Living is great. And all over the record, I think his playing is just great. His tone is phenomenal. I think it's a really good record. And like I said, I like all of these top 3 a lot for different reasons. Like I said, there's a Riot Going On. I love the production on it. This one I think is just a really easy listening record. So number 2 for me, Small Talk.
How many stars that one got?
Still at 4.
4. Okay. So last place for Cram. Second for Mr. Jason. Sounds like we got some stands at number 1. Not for this guy. I got There's a Riot Going On number 2. So it'll be an interesting choice for number 1. Might not remember what's left, so I won't spoil it. There's a Riot Going On. Phenomenal. So cool as a response to, well, the title anyway, to What's Going On. I almost said Let's Get It On. No, that would be a totally different thing. And this like the level of the shift in the mood from Stand to this is just like, it is an entire 180 away from that bright, like we can do it, to sort of like, all right, maybe it's not going to work. Maybe like we're all screwed. Just dark, psychedelic funk, really groove, like just pure groove throughout. It sounds unbelievable. The production again is just immaculate. It's perfect. And, the funkiness is tuned up even more. So the drum and the bass, just unbelievable all throughout. Love and Hate. It's so funky, but in like sort of like a dark groove kind of way. Like it's not like you don't want to like get up and dance to Love and Hate. You want to like just sort of like stew and just appreciate the funk. But like the groove is so strong, but it's just a completely different thing. It's very jazzy. There's some great wah guitar in there, and the arrangement, again, like we've talked about, Sly Stone, just a master arranger of instruments. With all that's going on, it just sounds crystal clear. Just Like a Baby, some great bass and drums. Again, the vocals are really up front. Music kind of floats in the background. Another song that's closer to jazz than like the soul and R&B that they were doing. Family Affair has a really great heartbeat rhythm from a drum machine. Billy Preston guests, some electric piano, which sounds great. Sly and Bobby Womack on guitar, which is cool, although they're tuned down like so much that it's really just like Billy Preston driving the show, and that really cool drum machine. Larry Graham's bass on Africa Talk To You is fantastic, just really loud and upfront the way it's recorded. You can really hear like the nuances of his playing, down to like the way the string rattles when he's hitting it. Like it's just like so cool the way that Sly put it up front like that. You Got Me Smiling, great horns, great rambunctious bass, but even that, like it's darker. Like You Caught Me Smiling, like, but I'm not going to smile for much longer or something like that, because it's still in like that darkness, and the things just aren't going the way we wanted, the way we planned, the way we hoped, with all the bright and like utopian visions that Sly had. Running Away, a little brighter musically, but lyrically it's like a dark rebuke of sort of like running away from problems and the hippie culture that had sprung up in San Francisco that he was part of. And great little horn solo at the end, like Rose's vocals coming to the forefront on that. And it's almost like you need to listen to this after you listen to Stand, like back to back, to like get the whole story. Like you listen to Stand and you kind of like get, oh, okay, yeah, we're all gonna make it, like we're all gonna come together. And then you just get like hit with this, there's a riot going on, and it's like, damn, that didn't work. Which sucks. I mean, Sly had such a great sort of peaceful utopian vision of how things could have gone, and sort of this is like the aftermath of it not working out. So it kind of sucks, but he made a really great album out of it.
I've got Stand at my number one. At least Jason and I are lining up there. It's 5 stars. I'm getting to 5 stars. I think Stand is remarkable. I think it's a real album for its time. I think it's like a time capsule kind of album. Big leap in the creativity in the songwriting. This does not have that problem where everything kind of sounds the same. The compositions are much different. You get it right off the bat, the title track, and the whole thing just has this really great, beautiful message, really confident, really provocative, powerful sensibility to it. I Want to Take You Higher is so awesome. I love the lead hook. It's got like that explosive venom to it. Finally getting some angst and like fire lit under them a little bit. But their music's not mean. You get that softer, soulful touch on Somebody's Watching You, which Joe said is like terribly underrated. So there's good diversity and variety in this album feel. The album feels just great, which was missing, and I think in the albums leading up to this. Great little guitar and wailing, and Sing a Simple Song and everything really. And I love it right in the middle of album being just a big, simple crying out, like physical celebration, like just this release for the album, so expressive. Everyday People, probably the crowning achievement of their growth as just like the musicality of their writing. I love Sex Machine. I think it's just a great zone out jam. Perfect balance to this album for me, from like the more serious, thought-provoking stuff to the stuff that goes straight into your body and your soul. It's like the late 60s and the movements rolled all into one album. Closing with You Can Make It If You Try is a great message, ending on that message of hope. It's almost like the Park Life, like we were just talking about Britpop. It's like the Park Life, like this tour of like the previous current state of Black culture in America. Like it's just brilliant, just kind of time capsule album. And all the songs are really good. Like most of my songs tomorrow for top 10 are from this and Riot. I think it's just perfect. 5 stars for Stand, my number one, baby.
Stand is also my number one. I think it's a great sounding record. That opening title track, just really inviting. And then you get to that like extended outro where it gets a little extra funky and get all those horn stabs, really cool. This was also their most commercially successful record to date, with good reason, I think. A bunch of great kind of pop tunes on here. I think you've got a lot greater social commentary happening on this record. Still striving for racial equality and harmony, but also acknowledging the tensions of the time, talking about the riots and the assassination of Martin Luther King. But you also have tracks like Everyday People, which is just like pure blissful pop. And then you also have a mostly instrumental jam called Sex Machine. And I love Somebody's Watching You. I love that bass groove, which they use over and over again after this. But I think it's really great. It usually works. Great little guitar solo on there. The horns are great. The whole track just has a great sound to it. And like Cram was saying, and being a time capsule, I think it's a record that is emblematic of 1969. It encapsulates all of the complexities of the time and puts it into an album full of celebration and anger, and there's release. It's cathartic. It's also probably the best marriage of their tunefulness and having great grooves and having message. It's, I think, a good blend of all the things that they do well. I'm still at 4 stars on it. I think it's a very good record, but like Joe was saying about it, there are a couple things that I think are not great. Don't Call Me being the second track, I think, is a little bit of a stumbling block, not because of the lyrics or the message or anything like that. I just don't think it's a great song, and I don't think it fits super well as the second track on the record. And I also don't like Sex Machine taking up half of side 2. So as far as like the way the record's put together, it could be better, and, you know, never going to be my favorite record of all time, but I think it is a really good record and a great distillation of what made Sly and the Family Stone so great. So there you go.
All right, fair enough. My number 1's gonna be Life, and I didn't see this coming because I didn't even like it the first time I heard it. I had it like at 3 stars. I was like, get me to Stand and the good stuff. But more I listened to it, I just love this album. And, you know, it's not necessarily the songwriting, or, you know, it obviously doesn't have the message that Stand does, or the, you know, legacy of There's a Riot Going On. I just think it sounds incredible. The way, you know, the guitar takes more precedence. It sounds super 60s. It sounds super R&B and soulful. And there's a great groove to everything. And it sounds raw, like it's more rock flavor. You know, they didn't do all the overdubs like they did with Dance to the Music. They went back to like a live in the studio sound. And I just think it sounds incredible. I think what they came up with on Dynamite, with just the amount of energy, the horns blasting through, Chicken with that really cool guitar, like chicken picked guitar part, real staccato, quick strike drum and bass. It has such a cool, unique feel to it. Plastic Jim with the interpolation of All the Lonely People line from Eleanor Rigby of the Beatles is really great. It's just a great pop song, but with this like heavy R&B flavor to it, which is cool. Fun has this really great walking octave bass line from like Graham. Into My Own Thing has like this little honky tonk piano in the background, just unbelievable guitar. Love the horns from Cynthia. That was the one sampled for Weapon of Choice, which we've all mentioned. And you know, the diversity of the instrumentation and what like takes lead and what comes through in the mix, I think is really cool. There's still some of that, like, you know, You Be You, I'll Be Me flavor on harmony, that Live and Let Live. Sly, you know, he's a uniter. He wants to bring everyone together. I love it. Milady's great. Just so much joy in it. The fuzz bass sounds incredible. The call and response between the instruments. Jane Is a Groupie, maybe a little sexist, but it is a killer song. The bass line's unbelievable. The drums are incredible, and it just sounds great. I think, like, melodically, this might be their best work. Like, I don't know why this wasn't a huge hit, because every song on here to me sounds just like a really great pop, you know, R&B flavored soul, funk, whatever jam. And it doesn't have quite like the you know, production and the smoothness of Stand, but I think these songs sound even cooler to me. And I guess they're not quite as like obvious pop songs, but I think they're all amazing, and I just love everything about this album. So it's a 5-star. Life, my number 1. Sly.
That's interesting, because my first time through the discography, that one really stood out, and I actually bumped it down a little after going back, because I was like, I love the sound of it. I love like the kind of almost rock influence on it and all the guitar stuff happening. I thought was really cool, but when I paid a closer attention to the songs, I didn't feel like the songs stacked up to Stand and There's a Riot quite as well.
It's good. I have the correct number 2, and I didn't think I would win this week, but yeah, Joe's wrong.
Yeah, you picked the obvious ones. Congratulations.
I think people will be disappointed that I didn't get higher than 4 stars. But if you count High on You, I did have 5 records at 4 stars. I didn't really go that low. I only had 2 records at 3 stars. I thought it was a solid discography and pretty enjoyable the whole way through. So a pretty good week.
I was surprised by how many songs from the greatest hits, spoiler, that didn't make my songs list. Like there's a ton of depth this week. I could not choose 10 songs. It was murder. And a lot of the songs that I kind of like knew and liked, things like what the hell was it? Things like I Want to Take You Higher and like Everybody Is a Star and Dance to the Music and Everyday People. Like I'd like those songs, but I thought those were like, before this week, I thought those were like the high points. And maybe that's why I never like explored further, because I only think those songs are pretty good, but I found way more songs than those beyond the greatest hit stuff that I thought was awesome. So that was a nice little bonus for this week.
All right, everyone. So let us know what you think of Sly and the Family Stone, how you rank the records, and what you think of our lists. Drop it down in the comments. Make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have not yet done so, hit the bell for notifications, and then check out the video description for Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, website, Patreon, and merch. All kinds of links. Hope you follow them, check them out. You'll also find what we got coming up on the channel after this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.